What if a single voice could pull back the curtain on an entire culture, revealing fractures, fear, and the quiet costs of protecting image over people? Hit subscribe and ring the bell now so you get first-hand updates as this story continues to unfold. When Andria Johnson stepped forward with her allegation, the gospel world felt the impact immediately. What might once have been an internal conversation between a few people suddenly became public debate, and the speed of that shift changed everything. Social feeds filled with clips, comment threads split, and casual listeners who normally came for comfort found themselves parsing motive. Johnson is not an unknown name in the genre. Her history includes both acclaim and controversy, and the mixture of those elements made her disclosure land with a complex echo. For some, her words confirmed suspicions they'd quietly harbored. For others, they felt like an unstable volley thrown into a community that prizes testimony and moral clarity. The way the revelation spread, through short, sensational clips and reactive interviews, meant that people often reacted emotionally before they had the chance to weigh facts. That emotional first, analytical second pattern explains why the initial moment felt so volcanic. When an accusation is framed as a headline, nuance gets replaced by outrage and speculation fills the silence. The dynamic at play is not only about one claim but about the cultural systems that shape how gospel artists and ministries manage image, discipline, and accountability. Johnson's choice to speak touched a raw nerve because it forced questions about what had been kept private to preserve reputations. It shifted conversation away from mere personalities toward structural accountability. Who benefits when uncomfortable truths are hidden, and who pays the cost? Those questions amplified the story's significance beyond the immediate players and made the revelation a kind of cultural test, whether an industry built on testimony would reckon with claims that challenged the tidy narratives it often prefers. For Jonathan McReynolds, the fallout was especially painful because his public persona is built around candid songwriting paired with a guarded personal life. He has long offered intimate songs that feel like conversations rather than polished proclamations, and that style has won him deep loyalty. But privacy is complicated. It protects individuals and families, yet it also invites interpretation when something dramatic happens. As Johnson's statement circulated, people began to scan McReynolds' public history for clues. Old interviews, throwback performances, past collaborations, and even casual social media interactions were parsed for meaning. A lyric that once sounded like a tender meditation was now read as a possible confession. An interview clip that had been background noise became, in some feeds, a piece of evidence. The compression of complex human moments into bite-sized proof is cruel in its effects. Context is lost, intentions are assumed, and the messy reality of people's lives is flattened into binary judgments. The spread of manipulated clips and AI-generated distortions complicated matters further. In many cases, corrections and clarifications arrived too late. The initial viral impression had already shaped opinions. That delay exposed the reality that in today's media environment, retractions rarely undo the initial harm. For an artist whose credibility rests on emotional honesty, being forced into public defense can feel like an inversion of the trust listeners once placed in him. Fans who felt an intimate connection to the music now demanded closure beyond the songs. They wanted full disclosure, answers, and narrative closure that McReynolds had never agreed to offer. That pressure reveals an uncomfortable truth about celebrity and ministry. Authenticity invites expectation, and expectation can become an entitlement that leaves little room for human privacy. As the story widened, backstage voices began to filter into the public sphere. Promoters, background singers, and former collaborators, speaking sometimes off the record, offered anecdotes of tense negotiations and awkward lineups whenever Johnson and McReynolds were scheduled to appear together. Those accounts suggested a pattern of careful management by promoters who preferred to diffuse potential conflict quietly rather than confront it publicly. In the festival and church circuit, organizers often juggle reputational risk, sponsor relations, and ticket sales. A single public dispute can cascade into cancelled events, lost revenue, and long-term damage. From that perspective, the decision to separate artists on programs or to shift lineups preemptively appears pragmatic. Yet, in gospel's moralized context, such quiet solutions can feel like favoritism or even a cover-up, decisions made to protect brands rather than to address underlying issues. It's important to treat anecdotal backstage reports with caution. Eyewitnesses provide texture, but memories are partial and motivations vary. A heated exchange in a green room, while revealing of tension, does not equate to systemic wrongdoing. Yet when similar stories emerge independently, they create patterns that merit careful journalistic attention. The industry's preference for handling problems behind closed doors, avoiding public drama to protect ministries and livelihoods, can look like institutional self-preservation when viewed through the lens of people seeking accountability. That tension between quiet risk management and public responsibility is at the heart of the controversy's broader implications. Fans have become investigators in this story, and the results have been messy. Because McReynolds' songs are intimate and often ambivalent, listeners found many lines that could be read as personal admissions. In the scramble to make sense of the allegations, fans clipped long interviews into short evidentiary fragments, time-stamped statements, and cross-referenced social media posts. This kind of participatory scrutiny can be constructive, unearthing forgotten context or bringing new witnesses to light, but it can also reinforce confirmation bias. In heated online spaces, people tend to highlight what supports their pre-existing view and disregard complicating evidence. A tired answer in a radio interview can be framed as evasiveness. A throwaway comment becomes alleged proof. The speed at which these reinterpretations circulate often outpaces any careful correction, and that velocity makes it difficult for measured reporting to catch up. The public response to Andria Johnson herself illustrates how fraught speaking out can be. For many, she became a figure of courage, a woman willing to break a code of silence that has, at times, protected powerful people. Supporters argued that her testimony was necessary to surface deeper patterns of behavior that had previously been dismissed or hidden. For them, Johnson's revelation was not about tearing down a single individual but about changing a culture that had too often prioritized image over honesty. Yet Johnson also faced intense backlash. Critics accused her of seeking attention or of destabilizing ministries for reasons other than truth. Some dismissed her based on past controversies, reflecting how previous public missteps can be weaponized against those who later speak up. Gender dynamics also surfaced. Women who accuse powerful men frequently face dismissal, character attacks, and disproportionate scrutiny. The polarized reception to Johnson's statement laid bare the difficult tightrope that whistleblowers walk in communities where reputation and testimony carry deep weight. The stakes for organizers, sponsors, and churches are practical as well as reputational. When controversy touches prominent artists, institutions are forced to make hard choices: cancel bookings and risk alienating fans and losing money, stay silent and risk seeming complicit, or attempt to mediate privately and risk being accused of hiding the truth. Sponsors, in particular, worry about associating their brands with scandal. Churches must consider their congregation's trust and the spiritual implications of platforming contentious figures. As a result, many institutions responded by re-evaluating contracts, pausing bookings, or conducting their own internal reviews. Those moves underscore the fact that in a tightly connected ecosystem, the fallout from a single allegation can ripple outward and force systemic reconsideration of how artists are vetted and how allegations are handled. A particularly corrosive element in this controversy has been the whisper network, the suggestion that other insiders knew of tensions but stayed silent to protect careers. The idea that multiple people may have been aware of problematic behavior but chose silence for the sake of relationships or economic security raises hard questions about complicity. Silence can be survival, especially in an industry where speaking out risks blacklisting or retaliation. Yet silence can also perpetuate harm. The current debate, then, is as much about changing institutional incentives as it is about assessing individual culpability. If the industry wants to foster environments where truth-telling is possible without destroying livelihoods, it must craft safer channels for reporting, clearer investigative protocols, and better pastoral care to support those who come forward. What began as a confrontation between two public figures has thus expanded into a critique of an entire culture that often prizes image above accountability. When institutions prioritize optics over honest reckoning, trust erodes. The gospel community is now wrestling with how to balance restoration and accountability, how to provide paths for repentance and reconciliation while also protecting those who have been harmed. Those are not easy trade-offs, and they require both moral courage and structural change, independent review processes, transparent reporting mechanisms, and an ethic that values truth even when it is costly. Fans are split in ways that reflect deeper loyalties. Some remain staunchly supportive of McReynolds, trusting his history of humility and the sincerity of his music.